Good afternoon, everyone. This is Frank Donaldson, and we'd like to welcome you to class number 4 here on this Friday, October 13th. We have a lot to cover this afternoon, and once again, we'd want to thank you for joining us. Let's begin, as we always do, with prayer. Let us remember we're in God's holy presence. Lord God, we thank you that you promise to be with us always. Thank you that your presence is with us right now. Today we give you our hearts, our minds, and our lives. Come and speak your words of life into our beings. We pray that you would deepen our comprehension, broaden our thinking, and transform our understanding of what we are about to study and discern. For you are our wise counselor, our perfect teacher, and our faithful friend. Thank you, Lord. Amen. As always, to share with you the housekeeping pieces that we always like to flash on the screen, probably third bullet point really important. If you're not attending this live class, as some do not, from class to class, then obviously keeping up with those homework assignments, even though you're going to view the recorded one, is going to be key and important in terms of credit for the course. So I had a couple of people ask me about that over the last couple of weeks. I just want to make sure we're squared away with that. As you know, we began with the introduction and have covered lessons 1 and 2 and 3. We have covered lessons 4 and 5. And at the last class, we talked about customer service a lot and covered lessons 6, 7, and 8. And we had a homework assignment. And that homework assignment was one in which we invited people to take the TFS tests in terms of customer service. This proved to be an excellent exercise. And so what we've done, as we said, we keep a folder on everyone. And what we did was we actually, Karen, tabulated all of the answers to see how everybody stood with all of the statements. And so without spending a lot of time, I think it's kind of interesting to share a couple of things. In terms of the vast majority of people who put down true, these were the 5 to 10 statements the most everyone wrote true on. Even though you may not have a formal effort, you do recognize the value of nurturing a culture of customer service. And also, number 17, you understand that customer service is not a program, but a process and an attitude that should permeate the entire school. Also, number 32, glad to hear this, visitors are welcomed with politeness. Also, number 47, staff members greet visitors to the school in a polite manner. 56, there is parking available for visitors. 59, your school has a clear logo or visual image that is recognized and accepted by all. 66, you understand the demographics and economics of your geographical area. So those were the main ones that everyone put down as true. They stood out, they bubbled up to the top. There weren't that many that were close to these top ones, and so we were really glad to see that. Obviously, there are a number of areas where people have things somewhat in place, somewhat true, somewhat false. As we look at the pieces that were checked off by the most people as being false, in other words, they did not have this in place. Number 13, the people involved in customer service have attended one or more professional workshops in order to receive proper training in this field. Very few people check that as true. Number 14, you have begun to build a library of professional reading materials on servicing customers in your Catholic school. Very few people were able to check that as true. Another one that very few people checked is true. You have looked for ways to collaborate with your external customers. For example, your board shares ideas and workshops with other boards in the area. Another one where a lot of people check that was not true, there is a customer service calendar of events. Number 20. Number 22, you have in-service key internal publics on customer service. Student leaders, faculty, staff, parent leaders. Those were ones that we did not find many truths on. Number 48, there's a customer service team for the school. And that not many people check that as true. Number 49, parents are encouraged to speak positively about the school and have been given talking points or the top 10 selling points. I thought more people would have checked that as true, or at least somewhat true, somewhat's false. We're gonna obviously talk about that. We're gonna actually get into that a great deal in the next lesson. And then the other two that very few people checked true on was you do have some kind of written plan in place for your customer service efforts, and that was expected. You do have some kind of affirmation program in place to affirm the work of all of your customers. And that was one I thought we'd have a few more truths on, but we didn't, but that's okay. That's obviously the reason why we're looking at moving on through all of this. Yeah, I know the slideshow is stuck on slide 7 because we're going over the customer service TFS test, so just bear with me. One of the things that I'd like to share with you is a comment that someone sent in that really made me feel good, in the sense that knowing that this whole course is providing a service. And I'm going to read it to you without giving away who it is or where it is or whatever. I utilized our pastor, superintendent, high school principal, and grade school principal as a sample set to take this TFS test on customer service. I had them all take it individually. Then I took the results and compiled them to see the variable differences for each question. 15 of the questions they all answered the same way. 7 questions were answered completely differently, and the remainder were a 2 out of 3 results. We were able to discuss the results in a short roundup meeting to share the results as well as open the eyes to some of our shortcomings. The feedback from the administrative team was very rewarding. They felt that the test was a great tool to have in front of them to really analyze our structure here at the school. This will be a great starting point as we continue to utilize the knowledge that I'm getting as a first-year advancement director. And with this being the first time the school has had this office, we're excited to move our school, and obviously following the line in the book, follow the compass, not the clock. I look forward to seeing how this and others can help our school. That was great to hear, because as we take a look at this, it is always exciting when we do get an email, and we do get a fair amount of that, you know, to make that happen. Okay, as we move on through and take a look at what we're doing, what I thought I would share with you is, as we look at this, I thought I would share with you something that I recently received. We had the wonderful opportunity of working with the National Shrine of the Little Flower Basilica. And actually today in the mail, I received this plaque from the work that we did. And I share this plaque with you because it shows you in their strategic planning process, they actually created a mission statement, a new mission statement, and a new vision statement. And the mission statement was, in the spirit of St. Therese, the National Shrine of the Little Flower Basilica exists to bring everyone in our community to an encounter with Christ, to grow in his love, and to go forth sharing the good news of Jesus Christ to all. Their vision statement, the National Shrine of the Little Flower Basilica, will be a band of joyful missionary disciples who go forth filled with the love of Christ in the spirit of St. Therese, giving witness to the good news, sharing the faith through word and action, thus drawing all to communion in Christ. And they worked on this for almost a year, these two statements. And was really exciting when I got this actually in the UPS mail this morning. It was really exciting to see this and do want to congratulate them. They were a wonderful parish, and actually 3 schools to work with, elementary and the academy and the high school. They were wonderful to work with over 18-month period, and really enjoyed it. Great people, and they have a wonderful plan for the future, and I know they're going to just do fabulously. As we take a look, we're going to focus, obviously, in this class on lesson 9, 10, and 11. Hopefully, over the last week, you received a newsletter that just came out from our company. It's our September-October 2017 newsletter. And this is the core team concept. If you did not receive that newsletter, we sent it to all students. And if you have not had the opportunity to read it, then I really encourage you to do so. The core team is something that we feel so strongly about because as we move on through all of this, oftentimes we hear as late as twice this week, once in a school I was working with in Sedalia, Missouri, and another working with in Baltimore, Maryland, we heard over and over again, the development director, the advancement director really are spinning a lot of plates and moving from one event to another event. And so we're going to talk about this core team concept. This is a group of 15 to 18 people that can create, implement, and sustain and really help you. And I'd like to share with you some experiences in this class of how this all works and how can it work, and use several examples. I've always pushed so strongly for the core team concept because I've seen it and continue to see it working so well. And let's talk a little bit about how it all comes about. And let's go to our diagram. You've seen a facsimile of this earlier, but obviously in terms of setting up the infrastructure for your advancement efforts, your Catholic school leaders have put in place a development advancement office with development advancement officers. All of you pretty much fit into these first three boxes, obviously. In some cases, people taking this course are one-person shops. In other cases, they're part-time. In other cases, they're multi-person offices. But as we look at this and find that it's so important, we also realize that as we move this on down the line, we have been using a philosophy. And that philosophy is the meaningful involvement of people. Another way to state it is people fuel. We also now today begin talking about this core team. And with the core team, we mainly are going to look at a group of people to work hand in hand with the advancement effort in terms of helping educate others what we're doing, helping us facilitate, possibly planning sessions, but mainly 80% of what they do is they help us implement. And I'm going to share some examples of this as we move on through this particular class, because I think the examples are kind of make it come alive for you. These are schools that are obviously that are working very well with this. So in terms of the people fuel, as we know, and we'll talk more about this, in fact, the one I just put up there, input sessions, we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about surveys today in terms of seeking input. We're going to talk about, many ways throughout this course of how people can be invited to become involved. And of course, that's that third eye. We look at this and we say, well, as we move forward with a strategic plan, here are 6 areas, once again, of Catholic school development advancement: constituent records, communications, enrollment management, fund development, meaning annual fund, capital campaign, endowed giving, memorial giving, plan giving. That's the fund development, the alumni involvement, and fundraising events. So as we look at this and we move all of this forward, once again, notice that the core team is sitting there as the right arm of that advancement office. And as we said in the first class, we're using the word development and advancement interchangeably. We're talking about how do we develop a Catholic school, how do we advance a Catholic school. So as we move this forward, let's take a look at it. The core team, when they come on board for the first time, they really are going to need to be educated. And obviously, things like this course, things like this book, things like you sharing with them what you're learning and have learned and already do know before the course even took place. I think it is really important that they are educated about what you're doing with Catholic school development in your Catholic school, helping them understand the challenges that you face, and basically involving them in helping create a plan of action to make all this happen. We're going to show you some samples of this, in terms of that. So the people that come on board of your core team are first ripple people now, Remember, we dropped the pebble in the pond. You see in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide that pebble being dropped in the ripple. And that first ripple are mainly those people that are really good stakeholders. They're your parents, they're your faculty, they're your staff, they're your parishioners, they're your alums, they're your past parents. These are first ripple people, the core team. These are the people that make a difference. These are the people that can roll up their sleeves and they really are going to work with you. And they represent your Catholic school really well. They're not third and fourth ripple people that you say, oh gosh, I'd love to have her involved, but she's not gotten involved. Coming in at the core team level is going to be a really tough transition, because core team is really people that know somewhat of what you are already doing. And so therefore, I think that becomes important. A lot of times we'll have people tell us, well, you know, what exactly, how do we invite them? How do we identify them? And I always say it's important that, depending on your structure, that the pastor, the president, the principal, the advancement director, whoever else is in that office, the parent leader, whoever is looked upon as the leadership of the school, those 3, 4, 5 people, they then, for example, would recommend, you know, quite possibly 7 to 10 people each, and then take a look individually, and then they would take a look, you know, you would take a look at what names keep coming up over and over and over again, and then you would get your top 20 list, and you would then start inviting until you get to that magic number of 15 who have accepted that invitation. That has worked well. That has worked well. So one of the questions that comes up in inviting people that we hear all the time is, gosh, some of these people are already so busy. They're already doing things. My question always is, how much value do you place on the core team? We place a lot of value on the core team. We maintain that the advancement, development, marketing efforts of the Catholic school are going to go how well in terms of how your core team goes. And so as we take a look at this, the roles and responsibility then become really important. They are going to help educate others. They are going to help facilitate input sessions and planning sessions and the like, but mainly they're going to help you implement. And we'll look at what they're going to help you implement in just a second. So core team is really a group of people that are not just worker bees. They also speak well in front of others. They represent the school, good reputation in the school community, and really are able to work with you and make it happen. In the book, there is a lot of information in lesson 9 about the core team. So a lot of the questions you may have hopefully are answered in the book. So as we look at this, you know, I always like, one of the things I like to call attention to is the last bullet point on this slide. I always tell the core team, I tell administrators, advancement directors, advancement team, always remember the 1-10-100 rule. And basically what that means is when you meet as advancement and core team, or administration and core team and advancement, when you meet and you talk, you're talking about in many times some weighty issues, some important decisions. Always remember, if, for example, you keep that conversation around that table and only around that table, and it does not leave that room, then it's going to hurt you times 1. So it will not hurt you. If that conversation goes out into the community, and by that conversation, I mean something that might be controversial, something that needs to be kept under wraps, something that's not ready for public consumption, if that goes outside of that room to people in the building and maybe on the fields and on the courts, that could hurt you times 10. If it goes to the broader community, and I mean mainly meaning social media and the like, it could hurt you times 100. So please remember, you want that core team to work with you. You want that core team to be your right arm. You want that core team to really make sure that they understand their value, and also the fact that you are seeking their best wisdom, but you're also seeking their help in terms of moving things forward. As we always say, as in the book, here's some keys to success that are up on the screen. I think that becomes really important. That last one, collaborative spirit. And here's what just to share with you, this is not in the book, but here is a core team meeting that I was involved with in the last month that I thought I'd just share an agenda, a sample agenda. The core team met. This was in this particular case, there were 19 core team members, At that meeting, there was the principal of the school, there was the advancement director of the school, there was the advancement administrative assistant, and those were the people that were at this meeting. There was opening prayer, there was welcome introductions, and then there was a presentation on the purpose of the advancement team, which is a lot of the slides we're presenting right now. There was some slides on the PowerPoint of understanding Catholic school advancement and development, which you already have been given and what we covered in lesson number 1. There were the names of the name of the school and the advancement team and who were the members of that advancement team. And then there were the focus areas for this particular school in this year. And those basically, now let me go back to that so you can understand what I mean. By the focus areas, what we primarily mean are those 6 areas that the advancement team at this school is working on: communications, working on enrollment management, working on constituent relations, working on alumni involvement, working on fund development, and mainly the annual appeal, which fits under fund development, and working on special event and fundraising events. So those 6 boxes, once again, because many cases the core team members are not familiar with that infrastructure. And so then as we explained all this and they answered questions and everything of this nature, the floor opened up, and there was explanation that in 6 areas this year, we're going to need core team members to help. Number 1, this was for this school now. There are some major donor receptions, and we are going to need help. The advancement director said, we are going to need help inviting people to these receptions. We want to make sure there's a personal invitation that is extended, and there were several donor receptions. One reception, over 100 people were invited. Another reception, about 50 people were invited. Another reception, 30 people, meaning couples, were invited. They wanted to make sure these folks received a personal invitation, and they wanted core team members then to help them make those calls, and especially with people that they knew. Okay. Number 2, alumni informational gathering sessions. This is when alums, class by class, or every 2 classes, are invited to come in and share information with the advancement office about what is going on with their classmates. Not talking about money at all, but talking about what are they involved in. And we'll talk about this at length in our alumni lesson. In fact, that's in the book. If you want to go to that and see what, look under alumni informational gathering sessions. So the core team was asked to help with that. They were also asked to help with the gap drive for parents. This is one of the divisions of the annual appeal. They were asked to help with the alumni annual giving phone outreach. They were asked to get involved in open house and the spring gala in March. And they were asked to help with corporate sponsorship opportunities. So these were the 6 ways, and then the core team was invited to check their first, second, third choice of which of these they'd like to work with. The advancement officers and the principal came out of this meeting with the core team, and within 3 days had made assignments, and the next meeting they had, the second meeting, was to then meet with everyone and give the job descriptions, the roles and responsibilities, and to get things going. So there's an example of an agenda for a core team meeting. Here's another example that I'd like to share with you. I was in Sedalia, Missouri this past week. Back 8 months ago, a core team was founded, and the core team basically worked on the two first responsibilities: educating people about development and then facilitating a strategic plan process. Now they're ready to implement, and they took that plan and divided it into 4 areas. One area, IT stands for implementation team, is governance and leadership. Another area is community. Another area is communication. Another area is people engagement. The core team members are going to chair, co-chair, tri-chair these 4 implementation teams. Implementation team number 1 is going to concentrate on researching a president-principal structure. Implementation team number 1 is going to look at looking at creative and innovative sources of revenue to help fund their Catholic school. It's a pre-K through 12. Implementation team number 1 is going to explore cost-based, needs-based tuition. Implementation team number 2 is going to concentrate on community. And there are 3 parishes and 1 school, and they're going to look at the ways the strategic plan offered in terms of building a stronger community, not only with the 3 parishes, but also in bullet point number 2 with the relationship and the surrounding communities. Under communication, implementation team number 3 is going to work on projecting and communicating a positive image internally and externally. And there are a number of strategies. Obviously, with this plan, there are a number of strategic solutions that will allow this to happen. And then they also are going to set up a process where they can let people know by benchmarks and outcomes every 3 months how this strategic plan is moving along in terms of its progress. Then implementation team number 4 is going to focus on 3 challenges of attracting and retaining quality teachers, attracting and retaining students, and increasing family involvement in the Catholic school. So here's an example where the core team at the end of a planning process now takes over as chairs, okay, allowing the advancement office to macro manage with the administration the implementation of this strategic plan into 4 teams. So you can tell I'm selling this core team concept because we have seen it work. We continue to see it work. And most every group with whom we work, there is a core team. And every workshop we give, every class we teach, every presentation we make, we are always pounding on the value of that core team. Really, really, really important. So as we take a look at that, I encourage you once again, there will be some pieces in the homework assignment that that will allow you to take a look at forming that. The workbook, in hearing from NCEA this past week, the workbook should be available later on this month. There are a number of excellent exercises in that workbook on the core team and how to get them up and how to get them involved. Okay, so that is lesson 9, and so let's move to lesson 10. Seek input from your constituents on a consistent basis. I've often used the gentleman that I refer to quite often that we've known for years and years and years. He was president of Archbishop Alter High School in Dayton, Ohio, and now Father Jim Manning is the pastor of St. Mary of the Assumption Parish in Springboro, where we had worked with them in a capital campaign to build a new church in Springboro. So they moved their parish from Franklin, Ohio to Springboro, Ohio, and beautiful new church. And I've been knowing Father Jim for 20 years. And I'll never forget one of the things when he and I first began to talk, and our philosophies just really clicked in terms of this whole idea of development and advancement. And he said, Frank, I really feel that if I'm not pipelining to my people, if I'm not understanding what Bubba in the pew is thinking, if I'm not understanding what Polly in the parking lot is thinking, and if I'm not understanding what Sally in the stands at the baseball game is thinking, then I really am not aware of what is going on with my constituents. And he was so emphatic about it, and in working off and on with him through the years, and even having him come in and teach some classes every now and then at our workshops and the like, I always credit that first bullet point to Father Jim. Pipeline to your people. Is it scary? Is it something that could, kind of say, my goodness, what are we going to hear? Oh, yes. But what if there are messages out there and you are not hearing them and you get blindsided? So in terms of many methods and vehicles to seek that input, there obviously are ways to build one-on-one relations. There are coffee gatherings, there are Q&A sessions, there are surveys and questionnaires, focus groups. What we're going to concentrate on is what this lesson concentrates on in the book. And we're gonna share with you something that we have had great success with, and that primarily is input sessions and using the ultimate question. I know that several schools that are taking this course have used the ultimate question, continue to use the ultimate question, and really get excellent information. We just got finished using it in a parish and elementary school situation here in the last several months, and they got about 1,200 responses, and they really were able, and it was all done online, and they really were able to understand where the focus was that they need to be concentrating. So let's first of all look at input sessions. Once again, if we go back to our 7 I's, if you remember them, they are identify, inform, invite, involve, implement, invest, improve. So we're talking right now about identifying and informing and inviting. That's what we're talking about right now in terms of input from constituents. So as we look at input sessions, what do we mean? Well, in the book, as you can see, it's usually a meeting, not of many people, but, it's people that are usually randomly invited to attend a 50 or 55-minute session. Let's say that you were going to do this with your parishioners, or you were going to do this with your parents, or once again, when done correctly, I underline those 3 words, there is a personal invitation from the quote-unquote honcho, meaning the pastor, the president, the principal. There is a choice of dates and times for people to attend. People enjoy giving their opinions. There's a personal phone call invite. Core team can be involved in this. They can help facilitate these sessions. And people are in and out in an hour. There's a clear agenda, and it's not a gripe session. So therefore, you have a set of guidelines as people walk in. So the main questions is really, what impresses you about the Catholic school? What are the areas you'd like to see in terms of continuous improvement? And as you look to the future in the next 1, 3, 5 years, what would you like to see? I mean, and everybody gets this on a sheet of paper with an individual input sheet, and everybody brings that information back and hands it in at the end. You gather some wonderful information. The process itself and how to proceed with it is actually on page 38 of the book. So I'm not going to go on through that and read that to you and all that, but it does show you, once again, of if you were going to invite a group of parents, what it would look like. Let's say you wanted to invite if you're in elementary school, your pre-K through 1st grade, or your 2nd through 4th grade, or your 5th through 7th or 8th grade. If you're a high school, you wanted to invite your 9th and 10th grade, maybe your 11th and 12th grade. If you were a parish, you went to every 5th name on the roster, whatever. But once again, there's a process, and there are established procedures and guidelines, and that is also in the book. Okay, I'm just going to read those because that's important. That is very, very important to follow the process. And pages 38 and 39 indicate that. Everybody should get an agenda, and with that agenda on the backside should be the guidelines that say we would like to hear from everyone. Everyone is on equal ground. This is not a complaint session. We are not here to discuss personalities. We are not here to argue. We'll be finished in 50 to 55 minutes, and you will receive a report within the next 2 to 4 weeks. And so you proceed, and usually what happens with the input sessions, you have the pastor, the president, the principal, welcome everyone, say an opening prayer, extend the appreciation for people for being there, and then she or he leaves the room and turns it over to a core team member, or turns it over to your advancement director. We like to use core team members. We think if they're properly trained, they can do a great job with it. So in terms of this, I think it's important that you look at this and see that the input sessions, do follow a process. If someone is in an input session, because I've been at many of them, even facilitated many, somebody says, well, I think you ought to get rid of that science teacher, then obviously, once again, I always use these 2 examples. The response is, Jim, thank you, appreciate the comment, but once again, let's go to those guidelines now. We're not here to discuss personalities, please. However, you do have your individual input sheet, which you can hand in at the end of the input session. So if you have any things like that to say, I encourage you to please write that. But please, let's respect the guidelines, folks. One of those guidelines here, we're not confrontational, and we certainly are not discussing personalities. Okay? All right, someone then is facilitating, and someone says out loud, well, why does this school do this and this and this and this, huh? Will you tell me that? Once again, the facilitator is not the shell answer man. All right, the facilitator is the person that says, Helen, obviously those are excellent questions. Those are excellent questions. Now, once again, as we told Jim a couple of minutes ago, you have your individual input sheet, and we certainly want you to write those questions down on that individual input sheet, and please hand those input sheets back to me. I'm the facilitator speaking now. Please hand those input sessions, that input sheet back to me. And certainly we're going to be looking at all of this, but thank you for the questions. Once again, I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to facilitate a discussion and really to entertain as many observations and comments as possible. So once again, yeah, Barry, you had something? So immediately we're moving on. We're moving on. Okay? So there is all kinds of stuff in the book that talks about it. It really is valuable. One of the things that we that I don't know is stressed or emphasized enough, but in these input sessions, one of the things that I always emphasize is this: if I'm the facilitator or the core team member is facilitating, one of the last things she or he needs to say is this. Okay. Folks, thanks so much. This has really been great. Obviously, a lot of really affirmative comments in terms of impressive areas about our school. Obviously, the areas we need to take a look at in terms of improving, and we've captured those and want you to continue to write that down on your sheets and hand it to me. And we've taken a look at some of the ideas you'd like to see over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So really, we appreciate that. Just to let you know where we're going with this. We'll be creating a report about this, kind of summarizing. We have several other input sessions going on this week and next week, and we'll be summarizing this and just giving you a summary of it. But once again, as we said earlier, we are about development and advancement. This is all part of how do we develop and advance, our Catholic school here. And so one of the main ways we will continue to do this is through, like tonight, is through inviting, involving, and engaging people. So once again, if you are invited to be part of a team, or you're invited to help with this or that or the other, we really hope that you'll raise your hand and say yes. In fact, on the individual input sheet, one of the last questions that is there says, as you look at it, if you'd like to be further involved in helping implement, any of these initiatives that we've talked about tonight, please check this and write your name so we can get in touch with you. Once again, I always like to end the input session with that and then the closing prayer, and then you are in good shape. So, once again, input sessions, great way for dialogue. Wonderful. Has to be organized. Invitations have to be personalized. Good facilitator who knows what she's talking about. Making sure that he or she is not the answer person. Making sure they cover the guidelines. Making sure they cut off someone at the quick when they start griping about something, and that's why your fallback is always that individual input sheet, because that's the sheet of paper that you always refer to when someone is saying something out of line, and you still want to capture what they're saying, but you want them to write it down. Okay, probably having sat in and facilitated several hundred of these through the last 27 years, I don't think I've ever had a situation except one time, where we had someone that was belligerent. So once again, these are a wonderful way for eyeball to eyeball. Dialogue is present. Now, the other way is to seek input from constituents on a consistent basis, is the input sessions, but also there is the ultimate question. Now, this comes from the Harvard Business School that was actually a book that was published in 2006. And one of the main goals is to get the school's NPS. That's the Net Promoter Score. If you've done this, and I know some of you have done this, and you know how valuable it is, you need to know as a Catholic school how now watch this. This is important. Okay, this is not this nebulous group out there that you're trying to survey. You need to know what your faculty and staff think. You need to know what your student leaders think. You need to know what your board thinks, your parish council thinks. You need to know what your parents think. You need to know what your alums think. You need to know what your parishioners think. You need to know what your past parents think. You need to know what your constituents think about your Catholic school. Are they promoting your Catholic schools? Are they just passive? Or are they detractors? Are they detracting from your people becoming interested in your school? And so one question is asked, and that's why they call it the ultimate question, because, the book says this is the only question you really need, although there really are two questions. But anyway, on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being not at all likely and 10 being highly likely, how likely is it that you would recommend the name of your school to your friends, colleagues, and our relatives? They circle the number. Please respond on a 0 to 10 point scale. And these are the groups that I just said, the second bullet point under that first bullet point, that we recommend happen. And you might want to put parishioners there too. This can all be set up under SurveyMonkey, if you use that or something like that. I'm not a proponent necessarily for SurveyMonkey, although we use it all the time. Okay. The promoters are those who circle 9 or 10. They're your loyal enthusiast. They'll keep quote unquote buying and referring others. The passives score 7 to 8. They're satisfied, but they're not really enthusiastic. The detractors circle from 0 to 6. They're unhappy, and they can damage your brand. They can impede growth through negative word of mouth. So really important that you look at this closely, okay? Now, to calculate your school's NPS, you would take the percentage of customers, quote unquote, who are promoters, and subtract the percentage who are detractors. The passives are not counted at all. So the NPS equals the percentage of promoters. In other words, those who circled 9 and 10 minus the percentage of those who circled 0 or 6. And you get your NPS score. Now watch that. Okay, there is a part B, and I'll give you the compilation of those scores in a minute. The part B, remember I said there was a second question? Well, the first part gives you quantitative data. The second gives you qualitative. If you gave us a score of less than 10, please explain what we would need to do and or address so that the next time you're invited to take this survey, the score you give us will either be a 10 or be closer to it. Okay? So really, with this survey, you're able to get both quantitative, meaning the NPS score, as well as qualitative, which is part B. Now, in working with many Catholic schools, here is what we find that is acceptable and what is not. If you score outstanding would be 65% and above. Average 50% to 64%. Below average 35% to 49%. Dismal is below 34%. See, you can do this by groups. So you can get a compilation of all your groups, but you can also know what your NPS are with your board, with your faculty and staff, with your student leaders, with your parents, with your alums, with your parishioners, and you can have individual, because your students may be at a 36, whereas your parents may be at a 59. So, and then you could always, you can bring them all together and get a composite score. So it is a wonderful survey. If you are not using this and have not used it, it's in the book. I strongly encourage that you take a look at it. It is so important. And that's why we kind of end with this slide on this lesson. Remember the 7 I's. And as we've said over and over again, the one I we seem to miss out on the most is the third one: invite personally. Input sessions and the ultimate question fill that void, because you are personally inviting people to attend an input session, and you're personally inviting people to take the ultimate question survey. And once again, providing wonderful data. How in the world can you plan, for the future if you're not really able, to understand what your quote unquote audience customer is thinking? Okay. Lesson 11, assess your development efforts. Now, if you look at in the book in lesson 11, which is a very lengthy lesson, lesson 11 actually has an assessment exercise, okay, that is that can be taken, and that it starts on page 44, okay, starts on page 44 and goes over here, gosh, up to 59. Now, that is not going to be your homework assignment. Don't worry about that. I'm going to tell you when I would recommend you take this assessment. But let's talk about assessing your development advancement efforts in a different way. okay? There are different ways to assess, but above all, it is so important that you do assess. You could use outside evaluation and assessment where you've got objectivity, you know. You could have advisory board of councils or people who serve on these boards assess. You could have assessment coming from president, principal, pastor. You could have assessment done by the core team where they do a SWOT of the advancement development efforts. What are the present strengths, the present weaknesses, future opportunities, future threats? You could have a conversation where we call it the nucleus team of the principal, the board chair, the development officer, officers, and assistant principal may sit down and discuss what are the strong points, the weak points, what are the opportunities we have, and what threats are we faced with. You know, as we can see, these are different ways to approach it. Okay, these are different ways to approach it. Above all, we think it really is important that you do assess. You know, they're different tools. But above all, if you're not assessing, then, you know, as Edwards Deming used to say, the father of total quality management, if you can't measure it, then you really cannot call it a success. You've got to be able to measure it. You've got to be able to assess it. You've got to be, whatever that process is, you've got to have an understanding, you know, of how you're doing. Sometimes it's something very specific, like what's in the book with these 15 pages, and sometimes it's something that is a discussion around strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, but above all, being able to assess. The assessment that is part of the book, you know, is one that we are suggesting that you do take, and what we suggest is that you take this assessment piece in April and May. Okay, the school year is winding down. Many of your processes have been held or are wrapping up, and we think it's a wonderful time to take that test in terms of the ISPD assessment. And as you can see how you scored, a 0 would be no accomplishment with that statement. 1, somewhat true, somewhat false, minimal accomplishment. A 2 would be true, average accomplishment. In other words, you met expectations. If you gave something a 3, that's very true, where there's outstanding accomplishment. And then NA would be not applicable to your school. So, you know, there are a number of areas. There's room with this in the book, and we'll also send it to you. You know, it's in the workbook. You know, as you look at it, I think that you know, it becomes a good assessment, a good evaluation tool. And with it, we always say, like the other TFS tests with customer service, should be done individually first and then meet together as a group, okay, to come up with the score. Now, you know, what we have found is that this assessment should affirm what you're doing well, show you areas of improvement, show you areas that quite possibly need addressing for the first time, help to establish your development game plan in a way after you've done this. So the areas of assessment, as you can see, that we look at that are in the ISPD assessment, these areas are listed on the slide as you can readily see. And it goes over many things, all the way from the roles of the pastor and principal to the core team, to alumni involvement, number 11, to the annual fund, to how, number 17, how you use technology in your advancement development efforts, to capital campaigns, to financial leadership, to plan giving in number 24. You know, they're statements that you rank 0, 1, 2, false, etc. You rank, you know, in terms of how you're doing. And like I said, it is so important when you do this in April and May that several people take this development assessment, go through this development assessment exercise individually, and then come together, as what I read to you earlier before the class, come together and share those answers to see where you are. And it is I've had so many people that have taken the assessment and have really done a great deal in terms of letting them see what are we strong in, what are those areas we need to improve in, and what opportunities do we have, what threats do we face with, etc. So, in terms of that, the couple of key points is that the core team, as we wrap up, becomes extremely important to the success of your development advancement efforts. Secondly, pipeline to your people at least once a year. Third, as you gather data, make sure that you do as much of it as possible eyeball to eyeball. That's why we like the input sessions, because there's eyeball to eyeball conversation that does take place. And as we said, it is best to take the development assessment in the April-May time of the year. As we move now to Class 5, within the next few days, you will receive the PowerPoint from this class, the YouTube video link for this class, any supplementary information to go along with this class, and then the webinar link for Class 5, which will be on Thursday, October 26th. Your homework assignment from class number 4, which covered this class covered lessons 9, 10, and 11. I will send you that. I'm looking at several things, and I don't want to overload you because as we take a look at monitoring the homework, some people are pushed by this because of your schedule. So I want to make sure that we, once again, give the homework, but yet at the same time don't overload it. And so you'll be receiving this, within the next, 2 or 3 days. And please have your assignment in by the end of the day on Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. Okay? The next class is really an interesting one in the sense that we're going to talk about strategic planning, number 12, and we're going to give you a process that you could certainly look at. We're going to talk about making sure your development advancement director is set up to succeed. But one of the major emphasis of class number 5 is going to be lesson 14, enrollment management. How do we manage the enrollment in our Catholic school? Not only how do we attract families, but how do we retain families and students? And then obviously, how do we manage that enrollment as they become alums? So once again, we're going to be looking at another really interesting class number 5. And so a couple of things is that we want you this time to please take the short survey that is going to pop up. It has some questions that I think will help us in terms of, looking at what is important to you. It'll give us some real good reads on some things about the class, so please take that. Okay, in terms of questions, will I be sending the assessment sheet from the book? So you won't have to rip it out of your book. Yes, I will. That's one of the supplementary materials that you will receive. Another is saying you're into strategic planning this year. Well, I guarantee you the next lesson might give you a few little wrinkles and ideas that maybe you can incorporate into your strategic planning, because obviously it does become important in terms of making all that happen. When are the best time of the year? Your question comes in. When is the best time of the year to do input sessions? I like to do input sessions in November and then again in April. And the reason why is November gives a pretty good read because families have been now involved in the school for 2 or 3 months, and you can get a real good read on how that first semester is going. Then, as I like to do it the other in April, because in April you get a really good read on how do people feel about this 17-18 year, and then that third question is, what would you like to see happen in the next 1, 2, 3 years? I can certainly get answers to that. Can be helpful in terms of planning, for the following year. Okay. When will this class be offered again? Colleagues are interested. I know we made we haven't even started promoting it yet, and we have about 30 people already interested, which is great. And we will be sending out, and we'll send it to you just in case you want to forward it to someone. We will send out the promo. The University of Dayton is establishing the link and establishing the registration page. In fact, they're going to do that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So we'll be sending that out. Just as a heads up, in the survey that you're getting ready to take in about a minute or two, there's some questions I'd like to get some answers from. For example, how many of y'all will be going to the NCA convention in Cincinnati this year? If you're going, would you be interested in attending a reception that we, meaning University of Dayton and ISPD, would host that would be exclusively for the people who have taken the class so we can kind of talk, meet each other? And would you be interested in that? Number two, we are planning to teach a class on the University of Dayton campus in the summer of 2018, probably a 3 or 4 day class. This would be an advanced class. It would only be open to those students who have taken this course. So those of you taking it now, those who would take it in the spring, those who took the beta course last year, that would be only open to them. This would not be open to anyone else. It would take what we have learned in this course and concentrate on 3 or 4 really key areas in terms of advanced. So that's another question in the survey. Would you be interested in that? We have not even talked about dates or any of that. Probably would be in June. We have not talked about cost. You know, as you take a look at the cost of this course, we certainly will make it reasonable and make it affordable, because I really feel that we're able to reach a lot of people. And just reading what I read earlier today with this class, at the beginning of this class, just once again verifies that a lot of good things are happening. So once again, we are really enjoying the homework that you are sending in. Really good stuff. Just like your comments. As you know, whether you're able to take the live class or whether you're able to pick it up on your own, makes no difference to us as long as you keep up with the homework and as long as you keep up with each lesson. And most people taking this course are able to do that. So once again, thank you. Hopefully this has been a good lesson. Looking forward to the next one, especially as we take a look at enrollment management. That ought to be a good one. So have a great weekend, and thank you so much for all your comments, and we'll be sending out everything here within the next 2 or 3 days. Have a great weekend, and God bless. Thank you.